dollars moving around where they need to move.
Absolutely. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Columbia Corridor Association Joint Contracting Authority. And a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. And so we will do roll call. Karen Myers.
Here.
Okay, Reed Wagner.
I am here and slow.
Okay, Corky Collier.
Here and a little bit faster.
Claudio Camposano.
I'm also here.
All right. And Tanny Stephenson is here, and we also have Amy Chomwitz sitting in with us again today. Okay, and so with that, we will go right to today's event, which is the budget.
Great, thank you. And thank you for making time for me today. We did have just a quick budget update, and I didn't want to wait to share the information with you. I wanted to make sure that you'd had an opportunity to see it before we come back and ask you to approve the budget. So with that, I'll pull up my screen. I just have a couple of slides. Oops, when I can pull up my screen. Am I good now? Okay, great. Oh, there it is. So here we are. Let me see if I can get you all back up on my screen so I can see you. All right. So this change to the budget or update to the budget is in relation to adding a project for the PMLS matching funds. So we are allowed to add projects to the JCA budget without authorization of the LRC IGA board when the projects are self-balancing and do not impact the LRC IGA partner contributions. So with that, the document that you've got in your packet will show you two columns. One that has the budget that was referred by the LRC IGA board that we reviewed the last time. And then there's another column that's adding in the PMLS matching contributions. Let me jump to the next slide. So here you can see that the update to the budget is to add these PMLS projects as an additional budget item for the upcoming year. And the PMLS support of $1.6 million will be received from our 4 legacy districts to be passed through to the Corps of Engineers. And the transfer will occur through a series of IGAs with the districts that Armand has been working on. I will say that right now we're assuming that the year 1 worth of funding is going to happen in the current fiscal year. But I will note that we only have 2 years or 2 months left in this fiscal year. And there's a lot of agreements that need to be pulled together and agreed upon and signed. So it is possible that we will push that year 1 funding into year 2. And so we would have 2 years worth of funding in fiscal 23-24. If that happens, I will come back and give you an updated budget that shows that shift. It's still self-balancing, so it really is just getting the money in the right year if we do that. Then down here, you'll see that these are the PMLS project payments. So that's the outflow of the money to the Corps of Engineers. So it is self-balancing. And then I wanted to walk you through, and some of you have seen this today already. This is the cash flow. This is a summary of the PMLS projects for the first 3 years of the project. And as I said, we're anticipating that year 1 of spending to be in the current year, but it's very possible that it could shift to year 2, fiscal 23-24. So we would have 2 years worth of funding in 1 year. So this upper section right here is the total obligation to the Corps of Engineers for the first 3 years of the project. The federal share is 65% and the local match is 35%. This middle section is a local match that's shared equally between all 4 districts. So if you look at that section, you can see the 1.6 million that we're putting in the budget is adding up all of the local match contributions from all 4 districts. And then this section down here shows where the funding is coming for each district. There is 80% of the local match that is being covered by that OBDD grant. And the remainder of the local match is being provided by the district, either with assessment revenues or capital reserves, or in the case of Penn 1, through contributions funding support from local partners. So the piece that we're concerned about with JCA is that full funding amount that's in the middle. So right now, we're assuming that the 2 million is going to go in and out in this current fiscal year, but there's a strong chance that that will push to 23-24. And with that, that is all I've got. I will stop sharing. And if you've got any questions on that, I'm happy to answer those questions at this point.
Okay, questions from the board? None?
I made the room go silent.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so it looks like that's it for the budget, and we will move on to PMLS. Is that you, Colin, or?
I'll kick it off, but it's really Armand who I'd like to thank, as well as Hong, for all of the support on organizing a lot of legal pieces, the board decisions upcoming. So let me just give you just a quick update on some of this. A number of you on the drainage district boards will be hearing a different version of this, but this update is about the next phase of the Portland Metro levy system study, the design phase, which is the pre-construction engineering and design phase. It is a 3.5-year phase that goes with the Army Corps of Engineers, 65% funded by the feds and 35% funded locally. As Lori just showed on the screen, 80% of our local match being funded by that Business Oregon grant through the levy grant fund. And just a little update too is that we have a bill that is being championed by Senator Frederick, SB 634, which is a request for the state to replenish that levy grant fund with another $15 million. And so we'll be making similar requests in the future, and hopefully that fund can help support levy projects throughout the state, especially ones in the Portland metro area. So the next step for the PED work is to go through these different agreements. Because of the appropriations bill that happened in December 2022, the Army Corps of Engineers staff does have a project team put together at Portland District. That team has been coordinating with our staff. I want to give big kudos to Mark Wilcox, who's the PM for PMLS, who's been keeping us coordinated and working with the PM over at Portland District. With the design agreement that Armand will talk a little bit more about, we'll be able to really accelerate that work. And then there's more work that is upcoming that I just want you all to be aware of, which is for the PED, or for all appropriations, it's an annual request. And so just how we had to make this request for federal fiscal year 23 to begin PED, we are in the process of making that request for federal fiscal year 24. We're in a really good place. We put in congressionally designated spending requests, also known as earmark requests. We got letters of support from the City of Portland, Metro, Port of Portland. Because our project was included in the president's budget, it became a programmatic request. It's a much better place to be in. So it also at least shows that our project has some priority within the Army Corps and the sort of federal hierarchy. So it's really good news. And then the other big milestone that we are working on with our federal advocate, Julie Minerva, is to get a New Start designation. We need this ideally before the spring of 2026. So we do have some time to work on it, but that will basically allow the Army Corps to start spending money on the construction phase of this project. Without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Armand to talk about some of the technical pieces to get us there.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. Good morning, board, or good afternoon, board. Sorry about that. I've been doing this a couple of times today. Armand Resto Spots, MCDD Associate District Counsel. A few of you have already heard this presentation, and a few of you will have the pleasure of hearing it on Thursday as well. But I wanted to take a few minutes to walk through and highlight for the legacy districts and the JCA board the action items that we anticipate bringing before each of the boards in the next couple months. We're all lining up to begin this design phase, and staff collectively felt it would be very important to provide this high-level overview so that as we start getting this ball rolling and really looking to get the design phase underway, we have plenty of time to look at these details, get questions answered, clarify matters, so we're not doing that all at the last minute. This is a lot of information at this stage, but the memorandum in your packet for today's meeting, I believe that is on page 10. All of the information I'm going over is in that. So if you want to spend some more time looking at that roadmap of how we're kind of lining this out time-wise, I'll refer you back to that memo. But if you have questions later, questions today, feel free to raise those, and we'll get those answered and shared over with the whole board as well. So just as you heard, just a little bit of that refresher, we'll be officially kicking off this design phase work when we formally contract with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under a design agreement. That's an overarching master contract that will provide for the terms and obligations and conditions of that design phase. Importantly, it'll identify the division of our local match, the funds that we will be responsible for in the design phase. That working draft of the design agreement, the current most up-to-date version, is included in my memo as an attachment. And then we've also included a cost allocation schedule, which aligns with what Lori just shared with you in that budget presentation of showing how the funds are allocated between each district and where they're coming from for those fiscal years. So to get to signing that agreement, there's some actionable steps that we need to take to get there. Like I had mentioned in my memo, I ordered those chronologically, but in reality, we will likely be making or proposing some of those actions concurrently, either at the same meetings or at subsequent sessions. So another way of looking at our next steps are, we've got a funding piece, and then we've got a legal piece. So let's start with the funding component. So if you recall, and as Colin and Lori mentioned as well, in the design phase, we are responsible for a 35% match against the federal government's 65% match for the design work. Pursuant to resolutions passed by each board back in February of 2022, all the districts agreed to share equally in funding that local match, contingent on two conditions. One being receipt of certain state funding, levy grant funds from Business Oregon, and then two, that the legacy districts would enter into a cost-sharing intergovernmental agreement that would provide for how that money is essentially pooled together and then shared to the core for the design work. So the very first step is securing those Business Oregon funds. Right now, or I would say a few months ago, each district board was briefed. We informed every district that the state of Oregon has awarded certain grant funds to each district. They are currently working on a minor revision to those contracts that would provide for the dissolution process that we anticipate going through in the next couple of years. It's a very small term that we've requested that the state include in that contract, just so it contemplates what our process is going to look like in the next couple of years. I'm receiving updates on that regularly. We were really anticipating the amended contracts any day now. Last I heard, they are on legal counsel's desk for the state. So as soon as we receive those, that'll be the first and primary step, is to get those back in front of each district board for review and approval. The second piece of the funding mechanic will be that cost sharing IGA. So with those levy grant funds and annual appropriations with each district, we can account for the money to fund the entire design phase. This IGA, every district will be made a party to it, along with the JCA. The IGA will outline that cost allocation schedule, a final version of it, as you can see in my memo, that'll be updated with the final official numbers. We'll provide for a process for how money from each district is moved over to the JCA, and then ultimately how the JCA, acting as non-federal sponsor on behalf of the districts, would move that money to the core. Movement of the money to the core payments are under the terms of the design agreement, which is also included in my memo. So let's jump into those legal pieces to get to the design agreement itself. As with prior agreements with the core, with the feasibility study in 2018, real estate planning assistance work in 2020, we've employed the JCA as the local non-federal sponsor. Again, the core sees this as a system-wide project. It's not divided by boundaries. And with collective benefits to the system and the practical efficiencies of having a single entity as the contracting local sponsor, we're going to be again recommending that the JCA act as non-federal sponsor in the design phase. And really practically speaking, all that means is that the JCA will be the signing party to that contract. And so to get there, what we'll propose for each district is that each district will, when we have the final design agreement for review, we'll be able to review those terms, ask questions, clarify any of that. And then we would propose resolutions for each district to assign the requisite authority to the JCA to sign on their behalf. So essentially, each district board would say, JCA, we are okay with the terms of the design agreement. Here is the authority to sign on our behalf as local sponsor. And then on the flip side, the joint contracting authority will, assuming each of those resolutions is passed, will accept those assignments of authority and then would approve the design agreement. And then functionally speaking, that would look like authorizing Jim as executive director to sign that design agreement. With that, the contract is signed, terms are agreed to, and the design work officially begins. So all of that, again, is in my memo in writing, so you can spend time really thinking that over. And we anticipate these actions starting to happen as soon as next month's meetings. So internally, we're still working out timing of how to best align when we propose these, and then when do we have the next JCA meeting. So we'll continue to keep everybody up to date on that. I'm happy to answer any questions as to that process and those mechanics. And I know Colin is here. I don't see Mark on this call, but if there's any questions related to the ongoing negotiations with the core, either myself or maybe Colin can answer those as well. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Questions at this time? No. Okay, so we're accepting this on behalf of the districts. And I guess my question would be, if a district elects not to fund it, what happens?
Yeah, and I appreciate if Jim and Colin also have some political considerations there. Functionally speaking, for the JCA to, in my opinion, for the JCA to actually execute that contract, we would need assignments from each of the individual districts to do so. And pursuant to prior board actions, each board has agreed to share equally in funding those costs. And so it's sort of part and parcel of moving forward that all the districts will be doing so.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that it's, you know, the project with the Army Corps is a single system. And so they see the four districts working in concert together to really take care of that single system. And so I think the previous resolutions and agreements and being able to go in as the JCA needs to be sort of everyone working together to make those investments.
Excellent. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, I'll stop talking.
If you have more questions, I know you've done a lot of thinking about it, Tanny, so it's a good time to raise them, and other people might benefit if you have them.
Yeah, I don't really have any big ones now. I really trust, I think legal's got this thing covered, you know, from that standpoint. Just want to make sure that, you know, that technically we've got it the way that we need it. And I think that's being done. So, you know, I'm comfortable with it if you guys are.
And Brian Sheets, again, has been a really strong contributor to making sure we're looking out for SDSC's interests as part of this as well.
Okay. Reed.
Yeah, so I just had to reflect upon the fact that 9-10 years ago, this was part of the reason we put the JCA together, was so that we could be representing with the Corps engineers one system of levy and pull together the resources of the four districts. The fact that, and I can't do the math, but 65% plus 80% of 35%, that's a whole lot of percentage covered by organizations outside of our districts, and that couldn't have even been imagined. So I just want to thank staff for such an amazing job of delivering on this and bringing something. And Tanny, you always have great questions. The fact that your thorough questions were answered is really helpful to know as well. So thank you for everybody who's put so much into this.
And I just want to say to you, this was your vision many years ago. And so thank you for having that, because that's really guided us to get to this point. And it's got to be kind of cool to see it come into fruition, really.
I was going to say this is your fault, Reed, but vision, I like vision. That works well.
Well, and Reed, we're still relying on the momentum you created. I'm going to be real honest. So it was nice to step in with on the basis of all the good work you had done. So thank you.
Well, I would say that at this point, the JCA is fully running now, rather than trying to figure out how to walk and crawl, and so yeah, it's definitely doing what it needs to do, and it's going to be the predecessors to this urban district that we all envisioned that it would be. So
Great, thank you, Hall. Okay, does anyone else have anything? Because if not, we get to adjourn early, I think.
Well, I've enjoyed the nice weather, everyone.
Yeah. All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all so much for your time and effort. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Corky and Tanny,
Thanks,
thank you for
Al.
doubling down on meetings with us today.
No worries. Okay,
It's
thanks,
what we
everyone.
do.
We'll see ya. Okay.
See you later.